Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, sponsored by the IBCA. We are a global podcast that shares the passion for the coaching profession. You will hear the stories of coaches from all around the world. We are covering the profession in game, outside of the game, and anything in between. As always, thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing the coaches' stories with you. All right, we are back with another episode of the After the Timeout podcast. Today we have Jarrod Olson, head women's basketball coach at California Baptist University. Coach, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So first, Coach, I think most of our guests, as I said that, said, "What is California Baptist University?"
Common question.
We start every episode with the opening tip, and it's kind of our guest opportunity to kind of talk about their coaching journey, maybe the stops you've been at, places you've been, talk a little bit about your program and kind of where you're located.
Yep. So, I'm getting a little bit older. I turned 50 this year, so I got a little bit more on the bio than I used to. But I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. My dad is a high school girls basketball coach. Nebraska Hall of Fame. It's kind of big time at the time. Won several state championships, tons of wins. You're actually, I should have probably told you guys this before, but like, you're getting the third winningest coach in our family because my dad's got a ton of wins and my brother is a coach at Concordia in Seward, Nebraska, and he's pretty amazing. So you guys definitely got the lowest rung of the Olson totem pole when it comes to coaching, but I'll do my best. So yeah, I grew up in Omaha, really good high school program, and I played for a great coach. Larry Ribble was his name. Then went and played small college basketball, NAI, Doane College for um, a legendary coach in the area, Bob Erickson, who also had probably like 600 or 700 wins. So I had really good background, growing up, which kind of set me up good for coaching. All my good role models growing up were kind of like you guys, were educators. So just kind of grew up thinking I was going to be like a high school basketball coach. I got my first college job as a GA at Emporia State University, 1 year out of college. And it was the craziest first job ever because we were 33-1. The only game we lost was in the national championship game. So I kind of thought coaching was going to be really easy because we never lost. And then from there, I kind of got into men's basketball, did a year of high school and a year of men's college basketball at Bellevue University before getting my first, I would say it was my first break, even though it only paid $6,000. I was the head coach at the College of St. Mary's in Omaha. It was probably the worst job you could possibly get. Like I said, it paid $6,000. My office literally was the custodian's closet. Like we like all of her supplies were in there next to my desk, which was kind of crazy. When I took the job, there were 7 players on the team. 4 of them were freshmen. One of them was a girl that was only going to play one semester, and the other 2 were student managers the year before. So it was kind of like one of those impossible situations. But I really loved it, and I learned a lot about myself as a coach because as a young coach, you kind of always think you know everything, and that was a very humbling experience. And I'm pretty confident God had me there for a reason because we were 5-20, and to be honest with you, I thought I did a great job because we just didn't have the talent to compete with the other teams. And it really taught me a lot about like how it didn't matter how smart I thought I was, or how good of a coach I thought I was, or how good of a motivator or whatever. It's so much dependent on other people lots of times. And that was a really humbling experience. The next year we won 18 games, had a really good season. I think we finished second or third in our conference. So it was definitely a big jump. And then after the second year there, I ended up getting, this was probably my biggest break, was Connie Yori went from Creighton to Nebraska, and Jim Flannery, who I was friends with, we played a lot of pickup basketball together. He became the head coach at Creighton and hired me as an assistant coach. And so I went from $6,000 at NAIA to being a Division I assistant. And I was there for 4 years. We had some great years. We won the WNIT once. I think we made the semifinals another year, but we had a good team and taught me a lot about like how college basketball was supposed to work, in a short amount of time, because up until then, I'd pretty much just been kind of like learning a lot on my own. I mean, at CSM, that's kind of how I did it. But I did want to be a head coach again. And so I took a job at Florida Southern, which is a Division II school in Florida. I was there for 6 years. It was a tough rebuild, but we improved our record every year that I was there. And made the NCAA tournament the last 2 seasons before I made the move to the other coast. And I've been out at CBU ever since. We're located in Riverside, California. It's been like the cool thing about here is that it's been like I've had 3 jobs since I've been here. When I took the job, we were basically finishing the transition from NAI to Division II. And then 3 or 4 years in, we transitioned from Division II to Division I. And ever since we've been in this thing, like I feel like our conference, we're in the WAC, which is the craziest league in America. We've had, I think I was adding it up today. I think we had like 29 or 30 different teams in the conferences that I've been in at CBU, if you count the Division II and the WAC. I mean, it's just been very chaotic, not a lot of like stability and structure. But I think that that's really helped me become a little bit more grounded and a little bit better in terms of like just kind of like making sure that our team was stable and our team stood for some certain things and our value structure in order to give us that stability that we need that we weren't getting from the outside. So it's been a great experience for me, and CBU has been great to my family, and yeah, it's just been awesome so far.
So my dad actually grew up in San Bernardino, so now I understand, Todd, why he left Nebraska and went Florida and Southern California.
I was gonna say Nebraska. It's good business decisions there on weather. Like you went to
Yeah,
Florida, you went to California. Nebraska is probably very similar to Southern Midwest where you live in
yeah,
Chicago. Like,
yep.
yeah, so it's a good business decision.
It wasn't a hard sell for my wife, I'll tell you that.
Okay, so you kind of talked about Florida Southern, so we're going to kind of
Yeah,
start with a little bit of Florida Southern. So you're at Florida Southern, you had 6 very successful years. We do our homework on our guests, and each year was kind of a little bit better than the
yeah.
last. You made the tournament twice, but then you kind of decided, as you said, to kind of pick up and move coasts. And we had a guest who, after I was talking to them once after a show, was kind of like, I love that you asked me why I picked this job, why I did this. I love when you ask guests. So I am kind of curious from you. You had your family in Florida, we were building in the right direction. Kind of what made you decide that this job, CBU, this specific job was the one for you? And maybe for someone that's, we're going to say, less seasoned than me, you, and Todd, what would be your advice to a young coach? Pick this job because of blank.
Well, I mean, the reason why I left was just because and I felt like God was just pushing me in that direction. And I know that's a little uncomfortable sometimes for people to understand, or hard for people to understand, but that's really what it was. Like, I just knew after that, my last year at Florida Southern, I just knew I was going to get a new job, and I didn't know where. And I was applying for a lot of different things. The athletic director here at Cal Baptist, Dr. Parker, he had been a women's basketball coach that I'd coached against when I was younger. And so he kind of knew me, and I was using him as a reference. And I had a couple interviews set up around the Final Four and stuff like that. Like a low Division I and a couple other, like, I would say, better Division IIs. And he just said to me, he's like, "Listen, like, I'm not going to allow you to use me as a reference if you don't take a look at the job I have." And I honestly wasn't interested in it at all because I felt like it was a step down, because I had kind of established that we could win at Division II. Like you said, we had made the tournament. I mean, one of our players from Florida Southern just retired from the WNBA this summer. So I mean, we had some big time players there too, and I just didn't see it. And he convinced myself and my wife to take a trip. The Final Four was in Denver, so we were already halfway there. And he's like, "Just come out for the weekend." We came out to CBU. I got food poisoning on the first day, so I basically met him and the president, and then my wife and I were sick for the next 2 days, and we really didn't even do the interview. But he was like, "Listen, like, I think this would be a great fit for you and Amy." That's my wife's name. And I was kind of like a little halfway on board, but my wife was all in. And I really feel like that was just something that, like, God was just pushing us in that direction. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me because I didn't think it was a better job. I think the thing looking back on it that I really probably should have just like thought about a little bit more was just potential. And it was a little risky, to do that because at the time, like, it felt like I was taking a step backwards, but the possibilities at CBU were better. And then I didn't know this at the time either, but like, just knowing that, like, if I'd have known we were going to transition to Division I, it would have been an even more attractive of a job. But I didn't know that when I took this job. And so in one way, I got pretty lucky because it ended up being even better than we anticipated and gave me way more opportunities than I ever could have had if had I stayed in Florida. And I think about that a lot because one of my former players who played for me at Florida Southern, she's the head coach there now. And so, I mean, I follow their team pretty closely. And I often think about, like, that could be me. I could still be at that school and would have missed out on so many great experiences and great opportunities, that CBU provided me. And just the leadership at our school is really impressive. And I'm just really thankful and appreciative they gave me the opportunity to take the job, which has led to so many other opportunities for me and helped me be successful along the way.
So first of all, having a reference as the AD interviewing you, that's a good that's awesome.
Right.
That's a good thing. Like, I guess most of us wish we could have that. But I want to follow before I get to the next question. You kind of talked about that decision making process and like, oh, this isn't, you
Yeah.
thought this and thought that. Like looking back at it and maybe expanding on it more, like, for coaches, like, maybe you're a high
Mhm.
school coach and you want to go to a different program or
Yeah.
you want to go to college. Like looking back at it, what was your process to kind of put those factors together to kind of think about it? Because I think that's I've interviewed for a bunch of positions, and John has, and like you
Yeah.
always go through that. Well, this and that and this. So
Right.
like looking back at it, what kind of can you narrow it down now that you're past it to kind of say like look at these things or maybe some
Yeah.
important things. Obviously, it's individualized for every person, but just in general with programs and things like that.
I think the thing that I would recommend to people is bet on yourself. And there's going to have to be everybody's going to have different conditions for success, and everybody's measurement of success will be a little bit different. But like, don't like necessarily take another job just for a small increase in pay or something like that. I think just really thinking about where you can have the biggest impact, and then letting the rest of those things kind of like take care of themselves. And for me in this case, like I said, I mean, I didn't realize and I didn't fully grasp at the time of like how much better of a job or how much better potential that CBU had than Florida Southern at the time. But thankfully my wife did, like, and she could just see our family living in California. And she could just kind of like, I think it really helped having her there on the visit because she could kind of like see some things that I probably just was too close to the situation to notice, whether it was like a small thing in a facility or just like the people we interacted along the way, where just having her there and just, maybe I'm just, the luckiest guy in the world to marry the best wife. But like, I think that was really the biggest thing was that she just kind of saw some things that I didn't because she had a different perspective. So maybe just getting feedback from people that you really trust would be like a good piece of advice. But I really think betting on yourself and believing, what you're capable of, and then just, you know, taking like a chance on like potential at sometimes and just like seeing if you can make it happen. I don't know. Did I answer your question on that? I mean,
Oh, that was
yeah,
perfect. To be honest, John was just texting me. He said he retweeted it, but like that might have been one of the best answers we've had on that kind of
yeah,
topic of betting on yourself. And
yeah.
I mean, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. That's a really good
Right.
answer. I mean, I would have to counter you. You have the best wife. I'm gonna have to say just so I can say that I have the best wife. So no, no,
Yeah, but Todd, your wife is in the Hall of Fame as a basketball player for college.
but she's also in the Wife Hall of Fame. But that's a tremendous answer. I'm not
Yeah.
joking. That's one of the best like perspective on what you got. So,
Right.
like I said, we like John said, we do homework. So during your COVID season, right? Your
Yeah.
team finished 26-1. You had 26 straight wins,
Yep.
and then 29 wins around the next season, right? Obviously, a challenging situation, right? You didn't get an opportunity to finish that COVID
Yeah.
season. So I kind of want to talk about how did you manage a win streak like that? Like at a level of preparation each game. I mean, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
That's hard to do, right? Like, you have opponents you think you should beat, but like you see it all the time. They call them trap games, right? Like
Yeah.
especially in football more and more when there's less season, but like, oh, this is a trap game. They're looking ahead to I don't know, the Midwest, Michigan's looking ahead to Ohio State, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. So, how did you kind of keep that level for your players throughout that streak?
It was really challenging. I mean, there was just so many factors that went into that season because it was the COVID season. You're doing the COVID testing. There's all sorts of weird things. I think I felt like it was the best job I've ever done in terms of like team building because I'm really into the basketball, right? And I'm not the world's greatest at like doing all the fun things that come with building a team. And I'm not the person that's like thinking all those things all the time, but like, I just knew that we're going to have all these people on campus and there was really nothing to do. So I started like just thinking, what are we going to do to like occupy these people's time? And we started doing all this stuff. Like I taught everyone how to change a tire. We learned how to grill, all these like different little life skills we're doing, budgeting money, all this stuff that I'm sure like if you're at UCLA, you probably have like 10 people doing this for you. But I was just like, well, we're just gonna have to do this. And so we did all this stuff along the way. And I think it just got our team really unified and they were tight and they just kind of like bought into like, hey, we're just lucky we're here to play. The year before, we actually had a better team, but our two best players were injured and were out for the entire season. And so I think everybody was just really appreciative for the opportunity to play because we felt like the year before we didn't have the chance to do as well as we would have liked to. And so we had a great leader, Ani Olaida, who was a 5'5" point guard from Spain that just kind of like she and I were together on a lot of things and it just had a good vibe and a good mojo. And once we got the thing moving, we started winning some games. Like everybody just kind of started to believe in like, we're just not going to lose. And it just kind of snowballed a little bit. You kind of mentioned like, how do you do that with like a trap game? I mean, it was kind of crazy because we had a trap game every weekend because our conference went to playing Friday and Saturday against the same team. So like we would beat somebody on Friday and we'd have to turn around and play them like, 12 hours later. I'm telling you, like people always talk about like the NBA playoffs being like a grind, and like how those things are just so interesting, from like a tactical standpoint because you're playing the same person over and over again. And I can't imagine what that's like because just doing it back to back was a challenge. But I loved it. I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really interesting to kind of like have the game end on Friday and then like get with your coaches and kind of like brainstorm a little bit like how we're going to do adjustments and do things differently. And you saw them in real time, like quickly, right? It wasn't like you had to kind of wait and see how this was going to develop. Like you had to do it quick. That was one of my favorite years though, like just because I just felt like it was just all about the basketball and about the players that we had on our team and our coaches, and I had a great group. So yeah, it definitely was something that I always will kind of like remember and just think of it as a great time. It was like the best team that nobody saw. And then the last thing I'll say about that one is the only game we lost that year, our point guard actually didn't play. She was our best player there in our league. And I mean, I really think if she would have played, we would have won the WNIT, would have finished the year undefeated. I know Tina Langley at Rice might disagree because that's the team that beat us, but I'll stick with that one for now.
Just a quick follow. That's interesting. So what was the format on that back to back? Was it home and home or
No, so like
you played the
basically,
same for your home court? Like you had to go there and play them twice in a row?
yep. I mean, some of those road trips were kind of crazy, like it's back to back road games against the same team, and
And was that
that
just
made it.
because of how they decided to do that, or is that
I think it was just like the crazy COVID stuff. They were like, all right,
yeah,
we're just gonna try to cut the travel down in
as many
half
games
because
as you can?
yeah,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
worked.
that's
We
crazy
played
because like
27 games, and at the beginning of the
yeah,
year, we weren't sure we're going to play any. So
yeah.
I thought it
Oh,
went pretty
I
well.
but like you said, that's a total trap. Like you could beat
Yeah.
somebody by 20, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we're gonna roll in here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like yeah, that's crazy.
So this is interesting, Coach. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Todd and I have talked to maybe 125-ish, 127 guests. We've never had a guest that has gone with the same program from NAIA to D2 to D1. Like that's new. We're kind of curious, what were some of the challenges in the beginning? Let's focus on the D2 to the D1. What were maybe some challenges in the beginning of kind of like switching complete conferences and switching complete opponents and just different, schedules and recruiting things and then what were maybe some things that you didn't really think of that you
Yeah.
realized later, like, oh boy, I never really thought of this.
I think I mean, the thing that really has been the most challenging for me is just, I feel like I feel like I went from being like a basketball coach to being like a small business owner of some sort, which nobody ever trained me for. Like, I mean, I spent most of my career with one assistant coach, if any. I mean, when I was at College of St. Mary's, my assistant coach was my roommate only because he liked basketball and he didn't get paid or anything. He just showed up because we were going to go play pickup afterwards. He would just come to practice, right? And then when I was in Florida Southern, I had the same assistant for 6 years and we shared an office. It was just the two of us. And then all of a sudden, you start transitioning from Division 2 to Division 1, you start adding all these staff members, and I'm trying to figure out like how to keep everybody, like invested, and it's just a whole different skill set. So I mean, that's probably the real answer. of like what was different and what was challenging. I tell you, the thing I really enjoyed the most was just like the basketball piece was just like getting to play against what at the, kind of feels like you're playing the best of the best. Like we played Stanford one year, they were the number one team in the country, and it was the year before COVID, so we weren't very good, but like, we had them on the ropes. It was a 1 point game with like 50 seconds left against the number one team in the country, and it's like you get to really see like if you can really coach, and I mean, I don't know you guys very well, but I'm assuming you guys, like would think it was kind of cool that you had a chance to coach against the best, right? And I think I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts with JD Gravina, and he had made the comment that like some of the best coaches aren't coaching at the best at the top level, and we don't know who they are. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I really think that like I just was the lucky one that got the opportunity to do those things. And it could have been, hundreds of other people, like I think about this all the time because like I said, my brother is a better coach than I am, but he just didn't get the same opportunity that I did. And I'm pretty appreciative of the chance I have to coach Division 1, and I try to take advantage of that every single day.
So, Coach, we didn't put this in there, but I meant to ask you, and this is because your roster, for those of you that have never looked at your roster is fascinating. There's New Zealand and Portugal and
Yeah.
Spain and Sweden and I can't even remember them all. Some Colorado, some Nebraska, some Idaho. When I was going through the roster, I had never seen a roster like that with people from literally all over the world. So, I was just curious, like, is that intentional by you guys? Are you looking to have that kind of roster? Is that something you pride yourselves on? It is a credit to you and your staff because that is like the most remarkable roster I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. I think we're just trying to get the best players we can get. And I always think my job is just to give us the best chance to win. I try not to try to overthink that. And if somebody is good at basketball, I don't really care where they're from, as long as they're willing to play the right way and they're willing to follow along with the value structure we have on our team, and be a good participant in that. I think that it'd be easier, if we just had 12 kids from Riverside, but that isn't going to give us the best chance to win all the time. And we've had some great players from the area. Our point guard last year, Nate Calhoun, was from Riverside. I mean, almost every year we've had somebody like that. But I think too, it's kind of made for a different experience on our team. There's just a lot of different perspectives, and we probably have, I would say, an incredibly diverse team from, because like you said, people from all over the place. And it's just a great melting pot for people to learn about different cultures, and different perspectives on life. And I've just really enjoyed it. Just because now I feel like I know people and all over the world who all share the love of basketball. And it's pretty cool.
First of all, I loved your comment about playing the best and going against the best. John and I, we're here in Illinois, but when I was at high school, and John's in one
Yeah.
of the best conferences, and that's kind of that's always been my philosophy. And
Yeah.
I'm a Gonzaga guy, like so they just go play whoever. I really like that. Yeah, we're gonna play, and we're gonna you know take our chances here. But speaking of playing the best, right? You coached in the NCAA tournament, right? First time
Yep.
Division 1 this year. UCLA, right? Really good program,
They were
really
pretty
good team,
good.
and they're pretty good, right?
Yeah.
They're not too bad, right? But yeah, you guys are making that transition, right? And just tell us what that experience was like for you, for your players, for the school,
Yeah.
like the whole community, to get to the point and kind of take that next step in your progression of where you started and where you're going.
It was pretty awesome. You had mentioned the COVID year where we won all the games. We'd won our league, we'd won the conference tournament that year, and we didn't get to go because of we were transitioning from Division 2 to Division 1, and that was a real kind of like we knew that going in, but it was kind of a heartbreaker, right? Because we had the team that did all the work, and the NCAA wouldn't let us play. And so this time around, like winning it kind of validated a lot of things, just from the standpoint that like we had been on this trajectory and this build trying to prove that we did belong, like that we could play against the best and we could do it. And just like getting on that court against UCLA was a little bit of a validation of that. And I think the coolest thing for me was, I mean, I'll just back up a little bit. So like winning the WAC tournament, it was like a pretty exciting game. It was really dramatic. It was like pretty awesome. And we had this thing set up where we had all the friends, family, boosters met up at the hotel afterwards. It was just like the perfect, scenario, great night for everybody. And then we had the selection show the next day, and we were all kind of expecting we'd be like, maybe like a 13 or something where you have a chance to win the game. And we ended up getting like a 15 seed. And to be honest with you, I was like really upset about it. And because I just know the history of like winning as a 15 is a lot harder, right? And I wanted to go there and win the game. And I go home at night. My wife is just like, "What is your problem?" And I was just like, "I just can't believe that we weren't seated better. We don't have a better chance to win." And she just looks at me. She's like, "If this is how you're going to be all week going to the NCAA tournament, you can just get out." And just kind of was like a reality check of like, "Hey man, we're in the NCAA tournament. Let's just go and do it." Right. And what I had failed to realize was it wasn't just our team or just me going to the NCAA tournament. It was the whole CBU community. And we ended up bringing it was like 1,500 fans with us to the game, somewhere between 1,500 and 1,800 or something like that. People that like pay tickets. We drive out to UCLA. We had a better crowd than they did, which was pretty awesome. At least louder. I don't know if we had more. We had a louder student section and stuff like that. And I just had kind of like missed the opportunity at the beginning. And luckily my wife had saved me of just like what it meant to the school and what it meant to everybody who had been on that journey from like a small school of 800 students in 1985 to like having like I think we have like 12,000 some students right now. And just the growth of the school along with athletics and just being, I just felt so fortunate to be the coach that was the one that was able to coach the team that night, for all these people that had been on the journey for so many years and just kind of validating it. And especially with it being UCLA, right? Because I was kind of like, well, it would have been cool to go somewhere and play somebody had a better chance to win. But for people in Southern California, that's the team, right? And so like to be at Pauley Pavilion with the CBU fans there, and I think it just was like kind of an unbelievable experience and just a great night for everybody involved with CBU athletics and anybody that's ever been a part of the school. So I felt really, really fortunate for that and very lucky. So it was pretty awesome.
Well, I feel like that's great perspective, right? Yeah, like
Mhm.
you always want more as a coach, right? You're like,
Yeah.
man, we should have gotten that 13 seed.
Right.
Appreciating the opportunities, right? Like
Yeah.
I tell my girls all the time, like appreciate the opportunities you get,
Yep.
the experiences, right? I always say, like, ultimately, like, yeah, you're gonna remember a big game or a big win, but
Mhm.
most of the time it's in the bus ride or at that
Yep.
game or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think that's great perspective. So kind of at the halfway point before we go into your scoring and shooting and your offense, I'm gonna go a little bit different here because this is something that just came up. We Division 3 now. I don't know if you know, Coach, but we now get like preseason practices, which is
Yep.
awesome, right? But we were talking about our transition and the get back and things like that. And yesterday I was a get back guy, right? Like the football
Okay.
guy, but I was a get back guy. Like we crash four, we get one back. But I guess first, kind of, what do you guys do in your transition? And then two, when I was thinking about it, right? Like you have drills for finishing, you have drills for shooting, you have drills, shell drill, whatever it is. But like thinking about it, like, well, how can we reinforce these concepts of, hey, this person has got to get back? So, what do you guys do in terms of your transition defense, right? Like, obviously you're making a lot of baskets, so
Yeah.
maybe it's not much of a problem. But,
It's always
um,
easier to get back on defense when you make
yeah,
them. Yes.
right. This is just something that's fresh in my mind,
Yeah.
right? For what do you guys kind of do with your transition, and how do you kind of reinforce those ideas? Because I kind of feel
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily like a drill you can do. It's kind of a IQ thing and a
Yeah.
realization thing of where you're at.
So, I mean, this is one that I like probably spend a little bit of time on every year this time of year because I mean, I really like to like follow analytics. Like I really believe in a lot of those things. And most of the numbers would say crash the boards hard, right? But in my own, this is where I kind of like deviate from it. Is like I just feel like from my perspective, like it's been better just to send people back and stop transition baskets. And so what we're doing on our team is if I think you're a good offensive rebounder, we send you to the glass. But if you're not a good offensive rebounder, you just get back on defense. And it's just kind of as simple as that. And we have like, I'd say right now we have like two or three rebounders, but that's about it. And everyone else is just getting back on defense. And I mean, there's times in the game where we've got five people just going back. And I mean, I know that's not probably like like I said, it's not the basketball 101 or the way the analytics would say, but it's just kind of worked for us. And we're just trying to take away everything in transition for people. But we do have like we have two or three like elite offensive rebounders, which probably like cover for us a little bit. But um, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. We're just getting back on D. Old man basketball. Shot goes up. We're at the top of the key. We go back to the other top of the key.
So I guess then, right, like I said, to me that's kind of a
Yeah.
basketball IQ thing. So how
Yeah.
are you? Right, I guess like I would assume a lot of you come from different programs, right? You come from
Yeah.
you have international players where
Yeah.
especially in Europe and international, there's different strategies, or they do a lot of
Yeah.
different unique stuff. How do you kind of maybe break some of those habits and get that realization of, because I feel like a lot of times they're watching the game, right? And I say all the
Right.
time, you're not crashing, you're not getting back, you're watching, you might as well buy a ticket to watch the game because you're not.
So I think two things. I mean, the first thing that really helps us is that we play really fast on offense. And so if you don't get back on D, like you can it hurts you, right? And so, but the other thing is like usually like, and I did it a couple weeks ago, like we're just in the circle, before we're doing some transition drill, and I'll just go around and be like, hey, which one of you guys think you're a really good offensive rebounder? If a kid raises their hand, I'm like, great. And I'm like, those of you that didn't raise your hand, you're getting back. And they're usually on board with it, right? They're okay, I'm doing it. And then I'm like, everybody that raised your hand, you've got some pressure on you now. You got to go to the glass. And those kids are like, usually, I mean, I know it sounds really simple, but they're usually kind of looking at me like, all right, I'm going to the glass. Like that's my thing now, right? And they start going probably a little extra hard. And I think just trying to get them on board with it. And maybe I've just been lucky because people have just kind of looked at me and like, I can't believe you just asked us that question. And he's actually going to let us do what we just raised our hands for. But I'm like, if you're going to be, take some responsibility and accountability, like you just go for it. And we do it. I mean, we do transition stuff a ton in practice too. So like I think a lot of that stuff just gets kind of built into what they're doing, and kids that raise their hand said they're a good offensive rebounder might change their mind like in a couple days, like once we've kind of put the pressure on them. But for the most part, I feel like that a lot of them just own it, and it kind of works itself out. I know that wasn't that helpful to anybody listening, but that's honestly what we do.
To be honest, I think that's a tremendous answer because like
I just wrote on my
because you're always worried about how many getting back this, that, the other.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of times, like they come from different programs, especially
Right.
whatever. Like like I said, I tell them all the time, like if you want to watch, get a ticket. You're not crashing. You're not getting back. Well,
One or the other.
we're really in trouble, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's a tremendous answer, and it gives them a defined role. Like
Yeah.
you're the get back, you're the crasher.
Right.
All right, here we go. Let's go.
I just wrote in my phone, ask them if they're a good offensive rebounder. That's not a joke.
I mean,
So
that could be an interesting question, to be honest with you.
yeah, my problem is they'll all raise their hand and then nobody's back.
But then you're all in on analytics because analytics is saying everybody should go to the glass. You got 5 on the glass. You can't lose
Yeah.
in this one.
Yeah, I'll remember that. So, Coach, we do our research on all of our guests, and I was looking at some NCAA stats in Division One, and I'm going through scoring offense, and it was like Iowa, LSU, South Carolina, Marshall, blah 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 blah, and then all of a sudden at number 11, there's a school, California Baptist. And then after California Baptist, it's like Texas, Gonzaga, UConn, Indiana. And I texted Todd and I'm like, I don't know who this is, but we got to get him on. He's doing something right. So we want to talk to you about offense, but more specifically, we want to talk to you about your skill work. We've talked to people about 5-out offense and 4-out offense, but for you, we really want to focus on the skill piece of it. So when it comes to shooting, what are some things you're looking for players to do in shooting? And then, what are maybe some things with shooting, you don't care about if they load this way or if their feet are this way, but you do care about them if they finish this way, or, what are some things you're doing to make sure your kids are efficient volume shooters?
Well, you guys are going to be disappointed because I'm not that technical, but
Okay.
like I will say that like with us, we have shot the ball really well. And I think the number one thing is just getting, I mean, for us, we can recruit people, right? So just recruiting kids that can shoot at number one. But then I think just like the two things we do pretty good is I think we do a good job of giving them confidence. And then we also spend a lot of time with just volume. I mean, every once in a while, like I'll like kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'll like change a little something on somebody's shot, but it's very rare. I think the biggest thing for me is just as long as they have like a load up point and then the ball goes up, like I hardly ever will like take someone aside and be like, hey, we got to change your form. I think a lot of it is I just want them to be confident and I want them to get the reps. And I think we do like in practice, we've got a ton of like time and score kind of like shooting drills, where it's like you have to make so many shots in a certain amount of time, a certain number of spots, all that kind of stuff. And we're on that stuff pretty regularly. So there's always like a little bit of we try to make it as game-like as possible on some of those. And then there's other times where we're like, we're just getting reps up here. And we're not as worried about the misses, where we're just getting reps. And I think, those two things, and then combined with the fact that like, and I think this is the hardest thing because people ask me this all the time, like how do you get them to shoot threes? Why, you shoot a lot of threes. How does that work? And I think that the thing that I try to coach like I wanted to be coached, and that's just letting somebody let me play. And then also just like we're pretty clear on like what shots we want to take. And it's nothing like that you guys haven't heard. We want to shoot a lot of catch and shoot threes. We want to get stuff at the rim. But it's one thing to like say that and like on the Zoom here or at a coach's clinic, and it's another thing to like really believe that when you have your ninth or 10th player in the game and that ball starts getting pinged around the perimeter as the defense is rotating, it ends up in their hands in the corner, of a tight game. And you didn't want that player on the floor to begin with, but all of a sudden they're on the floor, and now you know that shot is going to come from them. Like you have to be all in. Right. You can't choose that as the moment where you're not all in on catch and shoot threes. And I always tell our players, like, bad shots are better than turnovers. So just keep shooting it. And then also, like, if I wanted you to stop shooting, I'll take you out of the game. And so if I put you in the game and that ball comes to you and you're open, like, it's your job to shoot it. And if it doesn't matter if you've missed a ton, like, you just got to keep firing.
All right. So my follow, and I hope we're going to be on the same team here. We're going to find out is I do not like long twos. Long twos drive me
Yeah.
crazy. I'm a big paint, and if it's not a paint shot, I'm looking for a three. What's kind of your philosophy on maybe specific kind of shots you're looking from your kids?
You mean like, I mean, I think I'm the exact same. Like, any catch and shoot three is a green light. Anything at the rim is great. I mean, that's our first choice. We say at the rim first, catch and shoot threes second. I mean, how they get there doesn't really matter to me. Like, because I feel like, I mean, to your guys' earlier point, we have people from all over the place on our team. And so like they're coming from different backgrounds, and I don't want to limit them as to like how we're going to get to those two shots, because I feel like lots of times they'll just kind of like show me something that I didn't really think about, or they're creative in a way that I hadn't really considered. And so I think I'm just always trying to like be a little bit open to how they might get to those two. Every once in a while, we'll have some like people that are like convinced the long twos are the way to go. And that usually doesn't work out very good. But I don't know. Did I answer your question? I feel like I kind of, I didn't mean to dodge that, but like, what did you really want to know?
No, you absolutely answered it when the long twos are not the way to go. You were right on. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to take a lot of long twos, like that's okay. We can sit down and do the math, but like I always feel like there's going to be one or two kids that are going to, you can have one or two that are going to take, because you're going to need it. Every once in a while, someone's going to have to take one, right? And I'm like, all right, that's fine for that one or two players, right? But those people are different. And that's not the normal way that people would play successful, efficient basketball.
Well, I kind of had a follow, but you just answered my question, right? You have those unique players that are good at mid range.
I wouldn't even to me, like you should be better at shooting threes. And you might take one or two of those like every I'd say maybe you take one every like 3 or 4 games is kind of what I would say. And I'd be like, okay, I'm okay with that. But like for the most part, like if you look at our shot charts, like the little heat map is definitely threes and like all paint. And we'll have a couple outliers.
Right. So, okay, you talked about getting to the paint, right? And maybe it's similar to your shooting, and I totally agree with you. Like, I've never been a big fixture of shots. I've been a more value. Like, I've always been like, obviously, if somebody has something really funky, I'm a feet guy. Get your feet right. Let's do reps. But let's talk about finishing. Like you want to get to the rim, right? You're playing UCLA. They got some big
Right.
kids or whoever. So what are you kind of teaching finishing around the rim? Maybe posts versus guards, and then how are you looking to create those opportunities
Yeah.
at the rim for your players? Which if it doesn't end up in a finish, it ends up with your catch and shoot three.
Yeah. I mean, how we get there, I think the first way is we just try to play fast, right? So we're getting there before the defense is set, which gives us a better chance of getting to the rim. And the second thing we do is just trying to do whatever we can quickly before the defense is set to create, where we've got two on the ball and then the ball can move and we can attack, either long closeouts or rotation, and just not letting the defense get organized, I think is probably our main thing, is just to try to like play before they're set up. We set a lot of on balls, just because that's the easiest way. But we're doing, like you said before, you've talked to a ton of people about 5-out and all sorts of different offenses and stuff. So I'm not going to be able to tell you anything new. I think the biggest thing in terms of like finishing at the rim, like, I mean, I'm 5'10", and I was a pretty good scorer when I played, and I was a very unorthodox player. Like, I mean, I was a really good paint scorer at 5'10". And a lot of that came off of weird finishing plays, jumping off the wrong foot, kind of Steve Nash like, where it's like a little crazy. And at the time when I was growing up, like most coaches were not on board for that. They wanted me to stop, shoot the pull-up jumper at 15 feet. And luckily when I got to college, I played for somebody that was just kind of like, let me do my thing. And so I've kind of always taken that approach that like, I want them when they're driving the ball, I just want them to drive with some conviction and some confidence. And everybody's going to be a little bit different in terms of like how they finish. Like right now on our team, we got one girl that's like, she's just great at floaters. Like she's short, but she gets in there, she can throw it up high and it'll go in. And we got another girl that's playing great off 2 feet. She's a little slower. She gets there, she jump stops and she pivots, but like, and to me, like, I don't want to like restrict one of them or the other, but I'm like, all right, you got to own what you're doing when you get there. And then whatever they kind of like, we kind of decide on like what their little package of moves is going to be. Then we're hitting the reps and we're really trying to get after that a little bit. So I don't think there's like a one size fits all for people, but I do think it's just like being confident in your own game. And then also like putting the work in to make whatever it is you think you're good at to actually make yourself good at that thing. You have to put the work in. We spend a lot of time. I mean, my assistant Camille, she played for me. She was one of the best point guards that ever played at CBU. And she spends a lot of time with our point guards right now. It's been like normally like I used to do this stuff all the time, but I've been really like working on like delegating. And so I've let Camille take a pretty big role with our point guards. And she's been doing a great job of just like working on finishes every day where we're coming off the on ball on just kind of whatever their move is, they just go for it. So that's pretty much what we're doing.
So, Todd, I heard Jarrod Olson, Steve Nash, same player. That's what I heard right there. Same.
That's the best thing
I did hear
anybody's ever
that.
said
I
about
did hear
me.
that.
I
So,
wish.
so let's talk about free throws. I'm more wondering, not necessarily about maybe how you practice the free throws, how you get better at the free throws, but maybe what are some of your like free throw goals in a game?
Yeah.
How do you getting to the line enough versus shooting threes? Kind of how are you creating those opportunities? Because I
Yeah.
think sure we could talk about, how you make more free throws, but
Yeah.
more how are you balancing it between your girls wanting to shoot threes versus hey guys, by the way, we got to still get to the paint and get to the
Yeah.
line.
I mean, I would say that like we just constantly talk about like paint shots, plays at the basket have got to be number one. And then the threes come off of it's like we shoot a lot better threes when we get the ball in the paint is basically, so we just spend a lot of time talking about that. In terms of like a free throw goal, like one of the game goals we talk about a lot is just making two more free throws than the other team. That sounds very simple, it's not always easy to do. Um, but just like that's just one of those things. Like we just got to make more, and hopefully we'll shoot more because they'll give us a better chance to make them. But that's one of our game goals we have up on the board every time. And then also like I think that's the one area of like we talk a lot about your routine. You're just like getting a routine. I know that sounds pretty basic, but it's like you just have to have a routine and you have to know what it is. I don't care what it is, but you tell me what it is. So you can step up there with some confidence and knock it in. I think just in terms of like getting to the basket more, anything we can do to like put that defense under rotation and then just play basketball, I think that's going to give us opportunities to get to the rim.
All right, so let's go practice time.
Yep.
Right. And kind of devoting to each of those aspects, right? You're shooting a lot of catch and shoot threes. So you're finishing, what are you doing? Whole part whole, small sided games. Um, what are you dedicating to shooting?
Yeah.
Kind of how do you break up your practice allotment and your time? And you guys obviously get you get some extra
Right.
time and things like that that a lot of other divisions don't get. But where's the breakdown? What does it look like?
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of stuff on feel. And so a lot of that is like, I don't have like a formula where I'm like, hey, we're doing 60-40, or like my brother and I were talking the other day. He's like, what do you put in first, your offense or your defense? And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of go out there and just do it, whereas he's got very organized and a plan. I think in terms of like how we divide up the shooting, I think it's a lot of like, we're doing something like with intensity, and then we kind of like do a shooting, and then we do something with intensity, and then we do some sort of shooting. And so the shooting stuff is a lot of like the in-betweens. I don't spend a lot of time talking in practice either. So like when I say like we're doing something with intensity, it's like something that's up and down. It's full court. Like like they're gonna be tired at the end of that 10-minute section or that 5-minute section, whatever it is. And so then coming straight from that into some sort of like shooting section where there's like a time element to it and a score element to it, I think always has kind of worked good for us. And then at the end of practice, we just spend a lot of time on volume. In my mind, practice has actually ended, even though nobody has gone yet, because we're spending time now. We're just getting volume shots up, for whatever it's a time or a certain number. I mean, and some of those drills I'm talking about, like, I mean, I've just stolen them all from other people. Mike Neighbors has like he's the women's coach at Arkansas. He's got a ton of I think he calls it green light shooting. And we use one of those. We don't use them all. We use one or two of those. And we've got other ones we've just kind of like created as we've gone, but just like doing stuff like that with a purpose, I think has really helped us do that. But in terms of like the breakdown, it's usually like something with intensity, then something with shooting, or something more skill based, and then something with intensity, and just kind of like alternating that, as opposed to like offense and then defense, because I feel like most of the time we're working on one, we're working on both.
All right, so we're gonna go last two segments here. 30-second timeout. Your loose 30-second timeout. Your favorite ref isn't coming over to tell you get out of the huddle, right? You can talk about your program, something that's important to you. You can flip it on us, ask some questions.
Yeah.
Something you want people to know more about. Whatever it is. What's important to you? It's your dime, your dance floor.
So tell me, like, who you guys are like excited, or like who are your favorite coaches to watch, and like who are you kind of like excited to like maybe like do a little deep dive on this year? Like, is there like a coach where you're like maybe in a new situation, or maybe just somebody you just are learning about where you're like, I gotta learn about these guys, or who's your like go to where you're like, yeah, I really enjoy watching them play from like a X's and O standpoint, or like a style standpoint.
I'll go first. I got two. One, I'm a Gonzaga guy, so I love boys side, men's side. Mark Few.
Yep.
Grew up, lives in Seattle. I went to a game way back when I was young. Illinois teams were bad when I was young, so I became a Gonzaga fan. So I mean, they got great stuff. They give great player development. But on the women's side, I think Tennessee is going to be very interesting. Taking
That's number one on my.
You heard her press conference. I think she's going, like she says, right? She's going for
Playing big, right?
I think I like fast-paced teams. I like things like that. But that's one of that I think is going to be really really interesting. To watch throughout the year.
I was really looking at their team hard before last year, and then now that I'm kind of like doubling down, because now that she's in the SEC, I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to be watching a ton of their games.
Well, right.
Cool.
If you can get SEC players and they can do those same things,
I mean,
yeah,
I think it would be kind of cool. But I think a lot of people, when they get to that level, it just doesn't always translate like that. And I'm just interested to see if she can do it. I think it'd be pretty cool. Sure. Jon, how about you?
I would say I'm really interested to see if Calipari, first of all, repeats the same stuff that he did at Kentucky at Arkansas.
Yeah.
I think it's been a long time since Arkansas men's basketball was, I mean, Musselman had him at a really, really high level, but more at like the Nolan Richardson competing for a national championship level. I agree. I was actually thinking of the Marshall style going
Yeah.
to Tennessee, but I also think it's really interesting. I don't know how many people know that Mark D'Antonio's brother is the men's coach at Marshall as well. So I think they're always a really interesting style to watch. And then I'm going to be honest, coach, and I think this is going to be a funny answer to you, but Todd kind of alluded to this. I coach in the Chicago Catholic League. For those of our listeners that don't know about the Chicago Catholic League, that is like an extremely high level of high school basketball. The state champion came from us last year, who was a completely undefeated team and whose best player is going to Vanderbilt. So I think it's one of those things where I always just love. I'm a basketball nerd. I love learning from coaches. Todd and I are going to a couple of roundtables coming up for boys or girls coaches. So I love the high school game. I think I've coached in the collegiate game. Love the collegiate game. But I love watching high school coaches and seeing the different things high school coaches do every year, because I think they can't really recruit per se. So it's always interesting to see what people do in their unique styles.
And I would
Those
add,
great answers.
I'm interested in watching Juju Watkins too, because I think when she gets to the WNBA, she's going to be good.
Yeah,
Like,
we play them this year.
Did you? Yeah,
we play them this year, so it'll be kind of. We've been talking about that
already.
already.
Looking right now.
Right. Like in practice where you're kind of like, hey, that might work today, but what are you going to do when so-and-so, it's always like, all right, what are you going to do when you got Juju Watkins? You're going to close out like that, so
is that the
it's
scouting
been, we've
report
been
you
getting
pass
some
off?
mileage out of it.
That's the scouting report you pass off to your assistant coach, right? Like, hey,
I think they're all going to pass that one back.
Yeah. They'll be like, yeah, no, pass, right? I get that. That's sometimes I remember like when you play players like that, like, I'm the assistant coach and the coach looks down at you and what do you do? And you're like,
Oh no,
I got nothing for you, coach. We played Angela Duglick when I was at St. Viator, and he looked down. What do we do, coach? Got nothing for you. We can't. Yeah. And they're also their rest of their team was tremendous, right?
Right.
Coach, I got nothing for you. We can't do that.
But it also kind of makes it fun, right? Because
it's fun.
like you want to play against the best. So
and it prepared us for the playoffs. So
an interesting hire in the women's side. And again, I don't know how many people pay attention to this, but Kenny Brooks going from Virginia Tech to Kentucky, I think was a really, really, really good hire. And I think he's going to do a great job at Kentucky.
That guy's a good coach. I mean, I don't know him from anywhere, but I just know that guy is a good coach.
I like that, coach. That was a good question. I don't think we ever had that one time.
And we got to talk basketball, right? We got to talk ball.
Right.
All right. So we always joke. Todd loves to say, this is our last segment. It's quick hitters. I'll be honest. This is, as Todd would say, sometimes where the episode kind of falls off the cliff, but that's all right. We like to have fun with our guests as we finish. So the first one, this is actually a basketball related one, but maybe an offensive action you're looking at adding into your team.
We were just talking about this the other day with my coaches. I think that I'm just kind of looking at like some sort of like action into whatever action we normally run. So like maybe some sort of like double drag into like whatever 5-out play we were going to run, something to kind of like just misdirect a little bit. Cause we're pretty much like, we try to score in the first like 10 to 12 seconds. We're super fast. So a lot of times we only do like one action, but I think that like our schedule is a lot tougher. So we're gonna have to get a little bit more not complicated, but we have to do some other little things to kind of like set up our stuff probably more than normal. And so just kind of not necessarily even like false motion, but just like more complexity to our action. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I was going to say like double drag into whatever. And I also kind of like, I don't even know what people are calling it, but like kind of the up screen or the kind of like the up handoffs where somebody kind of like sets like a back screen and then kind of comes off another post off like a little handoff action where it's kind of like inverted. So they're kind of going away from the basket on those handoffs. I think those are awesome. So yeah.
Yeah. You're just trying to have some pre-motion before your actual action and get people out of position.
Yeah.
So all right. I mean, this is probably a pretty easy question. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. We'll see.
we were in California this year for our team in the winter, and it was great.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. We were in Huntington Beach. I played Chapman, a couple of those teams. But
Yeah.
best part of Southern California weather daily. What's the best part? Like
You can play pickleball every day.
Oh, he's a pickleball guy. Okay.
See, I told you it would be different.
I mean, no offense, coach. You're probably in the age demographic.
I'm getting up there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say out here, I'm the youngest guy in the game I play. I'm the oldest guy in the game I play.
Okay.
And like when I go to the park to play, I'm like one of the youngest guys. But the most of the people I play with, I'm the old guy. So
we got the best of both worlds then.
yeah.
I think this is the second guest in a row that's brought up pickleball.
Yes.
As a reference.
Yeah.
Okay. This is we got the hard hitters here and quick hitters.
Yep.
Would you rather sing or dance in front of other people?
I mean, I sing in church every Sunday. Not like I'm not in the choir or anything, but I sing, as the person in the back. So I'd probably have to go sing, but my wife isn't going to let me do either one of those in front of people where they're going to actually hear me or see me. So don't have to worry about either one of those.
Smart lady.
Yes.
Yes. Your guilty fast food. What are you getting if you're going fast food? What's your guilty pleasure?
I mean, I'm just all about pizza and ice cream. So I wouldn't even say like a specific. I mean, good pizza and ice cream. I could do that all day long.
He's a simple man.
Yes.
All right. So let's think about best college arena. You could think about D2, D1, NAI, best college arena you've coached in as an opponent.
So, I mean, you're gonna kind of roll your eyes at this maybe, but like, I really think my favorite one was Pauley Pavilion this past year. We made the NCAA tournament because we brought our fans, and it felt like a really, like a split environment. Like it was pretty cool to me that we had such great fans there and you could really hear them, and our student section was loud, so that was kind of like the opposite of how you'd say it. But I mean, like I think the most intense game I've ever been in from like a crowd standpoint, we had here at CBU, our gym, our old gym that we used to play in, where Division II seats 1,000 people. We were playing Azusa Pacific. We were both first and second in the league. Whoever was going to win is kind of win the league kind of deal. And it was a men's women's doubleheader. The men coming afterwards, same kind of deal, biggest game of the year. And I mean, there was just nowhere to breathe. Basically, is how crowded it was, and it was one of those times you could just feel everything. I think we scored like 3 points, and they scored like 2 points in the fourth quarter because everything was just so tight and intense.
Yeah.
It was a pretty awesome environment. We ended up winning the game, which probably helped, but that was probably the most intense game I've ever been a part of from a coaching standpoint.
So he likes coaching where John Wooden coached. Deal.
Yeah, that's always fun, right?
John knows that we went to Butler for an exhibition. That was Inglefield.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
We won the first quarter, but that's about it. But it was cool, like the whole atmosphere. But
yeah, the history and stuff is always cool.
This is our mission. Like we've been asking this to every guest. So we're eventually, me and John, when we get rich and win the lottery, we're gonna go to all these places.
Yeah.
But where's your best place to eat near campus? Where are we going?
The best place to eat around our campus is actually on campus. I think we're like voted second in the country for food. So like I would definitely recommend eating on campus. If you're going to eat off campus, I would say definitely eat at my house. So if you guys are in the area, we'll bring you over. My wife is a great cook and we'd love to have you.
Right, noted. We're good.
We're going to Cali. All right, let's go, John. Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough. Awesome episode. To be honest, you're kind of like a kindred spirit. Like some of the things you think of, like I kind of think too, and I know John does as well. It is. Thank you for so much for taking your time, and we really appreciate it.
Hey man, I love talking hoops. So thanks for having me on here. I had a great time, and I've enjoyed listening. I kind of like binge listened a couple of your episodes before coming on, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I thought the one with Gravina was like one of the best coaching interviews I've heard in a very, very long time. I actually texted him afterwards and told him that. So you guys are doing a great job. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the IBCA. Please be sure to rate us on whatever platform you are listening and give us a 5-star rating. For more show content and updates, please follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. As always, thank you for listening. Tune in next time for more content on the court, off the court, and anything in between.